Glad that you're here. Good morning. Good morning. There's our little friend from Dallas. Good morning. Good morning to all of you. Uh, this week, Sunday is Mother's Day. And so I was going to talk about mothering and how we all can mother ourselves and each other. And what I decided to do is just really honor mothers. Mothers uh, you know, mothers are the hand that rocks the cradle. That was a poem written by a man in the 1800s, William Wallace, that praises mothers and motherhood as the primary force for changing the world. Now, can you imagine that? It's the primary, mothers are the primary force that changes the world. Now, I see some fathers on there. We do not want to discount y'all. But if it wasn't for the mothers, you wouldn't be fathers. So there you go. When in June, I'll talk about fathers. But it's so important as mothers to be good mothers and strive to be good mothers. And the reason I went into the alcoholism field is my mother was a severe alcoholic and prescription drug addict, and she couldn't be a mother. And she was an orphan. Her mother died when she was young. And on a certain level, I think my mother was jealous that her children had a mother. I know that sounds sick, but my mother was mentally ill besides having alcoholism and prescription drug addiction. I think that she didn't like that we had a mother and she didn't. And so she didn't do much mothering. She couldn't because of her addiction. So that's really the reason I wanted to go into the alcoholism field to work with families, particularly mothers, women who are alcoholics. It's one thing to have a father that's an alcoholic, and that can be severe. My children lived in alcoholism for years until their father, thank God, found uh, recovery. And, when he passed away, he had 32 years of sobriety. But what really made a difference in their lives is when I found Al Anon Family Group and stayed there for 14 years. I mean, stayed there, still am there, but I was there 14 years before my husband ever went to his first AA meeting. It's almost like God had to get me out of the way before he could, even attempt to work with my husband, or that my husband would even want sobriety. And that's his business. I don't know that. But anyway, that's the reason I went into the field, because it is for children to be raised by alcoholic mothers. It's horrendous. And if any of you are out there that are alcoholic and you're a mother, and if you are practicing a disease of the alcoholism or an eating disorder, I hope you'll listen with both ears because you cannot do much mothering when you are mothering your addiction. When you're putting all your focus on your addiction, there's not a lot of time left for your children. I give anything if someone had taken me out of the home back then, but people couldn't recognize the disease of alcoholism. I mean, they didn't know. They didn't know. So I went into the field, like I said, primarily to work with families and primarily to work with children. And how you work with children is you help get their parents sober. Parents that are in any addiction, I don't care what the addiction is, that's where their focus is. It's not on their children. And I got to thinking this morning about my own mother. Yes, she was a drug addict and, an alcoholic, but she also had an eating disorder. And we didn't know what an eating disorder was back then. I got to thinking this morning, my mother went from 90 pounds to 210 pounds and 180 pounds and back to 100 pounds. I mean, being in the field, I would suspect that she was anorexic and a compulsive overeater, you know. And the reason I, didn't ever recognize it is because I wanted to be thin like her, but she didn't stay thin very long. She'd eat herself back up. So to 200 or 210. And she would joke about it. and she'd tell me about my own weight. She'd say, you know, uh, laugh and the world laughs with you. Cry and you cry alone. I've cried a lot about my weight and about being made fun of as a child, overweight and all. So anyway, I want to direct this talk absolutely to honor mothers, but also if there is anyone that is practicing any addiction and you have children, we can't sober up or clean up for anyone but ourselves. But, by God, I hope you will take your child or your children into consideration and get yourself sober, clean, and sober, or don't be around your child. Give your child away. And I feel very strong about that because being raised in by a very sick alcoholic mother. And so, anyway, I'll get off that bandstand. And I do want to honor mothers and really talk about what it takes to be a good mother. And I will tell you, as a mother myself, I made some decisions early on that I wanted children. And I don't know where I came up with the idea that I wanted 4 boys. But God knew different, and He gave me 1 boy, 1 son, and 3 daughters. And I'm very grateful that He did. Now, my 3 daughters think that I've always loved that son more than I have them, which I haven't, but they've always called him the golden child, that he's up on a pedestal. And Mama loved him better than us because she let him always have the center cinnamon roll. He got to get the center cinnamon roll, or he got to get the white meat of the chicken, whatever. I mean, when they all get together and tell their stories, it's quite funny and we all laugh. I love to listen to my grown adult children talk about their childhood, because there was some dysfunction, and the main dysfunction was me. I mean, I was a good mother, I was a stay-at-home mother, a good homemaker. I made it my life's work to be a good homemaker and involved in everything that my children did. And I would have that rage. Something would upset me. My husband would be gone 3 or 4 days and out drunk, and that rage would come up, and I've directed at my children, and I'll spend the rest of my life making amends to my children for that. And the way I make amends is I don't rage anymore. I don't rage at anyone, particularly my children. I just don't. And my kids say, Mother, you are forgiven. So I do take that. And I love to hear them talk about the good things about their childhood. That's all they talk about anymore. And so I just sit and listen. But I want to go over some things that a good mother does to be the best. And we can't ever be the best. We strive for perfection and settle for a little progress. So I want to talk to you about one of the things is to teach our children how to live life to the fullest by letting them be who they are. Teach our children to live life to the fullest and encourage them to be who they are. Now, I will tell you, I did not want my children to grow up the way I did. And, bless my heart. I mean, I didn't get to participate in things, but anyway, I wanted my kids to participate in anything they wanted to. And I had my hand on their back. I pushed them in a lot of ways. I don't regret some of that because of the advantages that they had, and they were all smart and all that. But anyway, it is to encourage kids by letting them live their own lives. Don't try to mold them into what you want them to be, but encourage them and encourage them to do things that is maybe outside your comfort zone. And then the second thing is be there for your children when they need you. Now, in today's time, there's a lot more working mothers than there are stay-at-home moms. And there's grandmothers raising children, and there's aunts raising children, and there's dads raising children. But what children need is their needs met. They need their needs met. Now, I don't mean just be at their beck and call. I don't mean about spoiling them. We always say that our grandchildren were never spoiled. They were just well loved. And that's what they were, well loved. You know, my grandson Spencer, he never took to spoiling, but I mean, if a kid could have been spoiled, we would have all spoiled him. But anyway, so uh, and then the next thing is teach children to have their own self worth, and their own self esteem. And how children get esteemed is from their parents esteeming them. And if a parent doesn't have their own self worth and their own self esteem, that will transfer to those children. They'll grow up not feeling good about themselves because mama didn't, and she always talked about how bad she was or whatever. And that will go right into the brain and the heart of the child. Don't put yourself down in front of your children. Uh, so, and this is sort of a given, but there's a lot of children in this United States that doesn't have this next thing. This next thing is to provide appropriate food, shelter, and medical, that just sounds medical care for all of you that I'm looking at right here. That's just a given. But there's children all over this world this morning that they don't have this. They do not have this. So that is just a given for mothers to see that their children have appropriate food, shelter, and medical care. I've worked with a lot of alcoholic women and a lot of drug addict women. Now, I'll tell you, when they're into their addiction, and eating disorder women, and when they're in their addiction, they don't give a flip where those kids eat or not. They have a sore throat. Oh, well, they'll get over it. Their focus is not on the children's needs. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And my belief is those children need to be taken out of homes, whether you would, and I'll tell you, there's not a judge alive working on a bench that will, I mean, the mom has to be pretty bad before a judge will take the child away from the mother, because everyone believes that the mother will give the best care. I will tell you, some alcoholic women and eating disorder women and drug addict women do not need to have the care of their children. That is just my opinion. I've seen too many of them being neglected through, emotional neglect, physical neglect. So anyway, I'm on a roll this morning about alcoholic women, and I love alcoholic women, but I'll tell you, they are hard to work with because they don't see that they have that big a problem. Or eating disorder women, they don't see that it's interfering with their motherhood. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is a lot. Because when you're into the food, when you're binging and purging your guts out over that porcelain throne, how much are you thinking about your child? Just think about, or when you take that drink, how much you thinking about your child. So another thing then is be a good example for your children. That's what a good mother does. She sets a pattern. Now, like I said, we're not going to do this perfect, but where are they going to learn? Where is their classroom early on? It is in the home, and they're watching you. They're watching you all the time. My granddaughter was here from Dallas. She's in real estate and she's a surveyor, and she had to come here for work, and she brought her two precious little grandbabies, which that makes me their great grandmother. And so my son, who never changed a diaper on his children, anyway, he's retired, and so he kept the babies yesterday. So Misty and I went over to help him. And when his daughter came in, I mean, the eyes of those babies just lit up. And I'll tell you, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter's mother, they have two daughters, and I have never seen a better mother than my daughter-in-law. And I can see the parenting that the granddaughter is giving to my great grandchildren. It is passed on. It is passed on. But I'll tell you, it can stop in one generation. If you haven't had good parenting, you can become a good parent, and you can change that generational curse of bad parenting. I promise you. So be a good example. And then another thing is make time to have fun with your kids. Fun is important. Kids need to laugh. They need to see parents laugh. And it breaks that monotony. It breaks the seriousness. Life is serious. Absolutely, it's serious. You know, we've just coming through, hopefully, toward the end of a pandemic. That's been hard. But I have heard from people and have seen, you know, on Facebook and things where it has drawn people closer together. And one of the things that I've seen is they do a lot of fun things. They've done, you know, now you can wear that out and it's kind of time for us to all get back to, you know, to some normalcy. But, you know, a good mother has fun with their kids. You know, one of the things that my kids love to talk about is when it would snow, we they'd put me, it was one of the times that I'd lost weight, and they would put me on this makeshift sled thing that they had made, and they'd pull me all the way down this little road. Anyway, I got out and played with the kids. I'd never played as a kid, so I really didn't know how to play. My children taught me how to have fun, and they still do. They still teach me how to have fun, and my grandchildren do. So then another thing is allow room for your children to make mistakes. You know, kids are going to make mistakes. I don't care what age they are, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to forget their homework. They're going to leave their books at school. They're going to, you know, be driving, just get their license, and they're going to be stopped and get a ticket. They're going to do things that is, you know, the brain doesn't fully form till we're 25. So cut your kids some slack when they make mistakes. But guess what? They're not mistakes. You know, your children, our children are not mistakes, but they're not going to do things perfect. And when we expect that, we're setting ourselves up in them. Cut them some slack. And then along with that, what is going to happen is you're going to teach them about forgiveness. Yeah, if it's something that they've done, you're going to have to address it. If you don't, you're not a good parent. You know, you need to address it. But also, you know, that behavior needs to, you know, some of the behavior needs to change. And what we need to do as parents is to forgive them of whatever mistake they've made, and don't keep bringing it up and rubbing their noses in it and reminding them, well, you remember when, you know. So forgiveness, forgiveness. And then a good mother teaches a child, their children, about unconditional love, unconditional positive regard. I grew up in a household. My dad would have made Archie Bunker look like a saint. He was the most racist man I've ever known, ever. And he was very white complected, blonde headed, blue eyed, and that's all he liked was white skinned people with blonde hair and blue eyes. Look at me. I took after my mother. I had dark skin, black hair, black eyes. And he never called me by name. He called me the black baby. And today I would look at that as abuse. I mean, really would, because he never knew my name. And so you know, we need to teach our children unconditional love, you know, that everyone is worthy of love. Now, do we want to stay grouped up around unlovely people all the time? No, you know, if we're around people that are hard to get along with or that are not appropriate to be around, you know, like what Jesus would do. You know, he would go to people and he would stand with them and stand with them and stand with them. And then when he got it that they did not want what he had, he wouldn't keep standing there and try to talk them into it. The Bible says, and I'm not a Bible. Anyway, what the Bible says is that he would shake the dust off of his sandals. He would bless them. He would turn around and walk away and leave them to their misery. So in teaching kids about unconditional love, we can love people unconditionally, but we don't have to be best friends and, you know, be with them all the time. My friend Misty teaches her children, because there's kids learn from each other. They learn more from each other than they learn from parents. And what Misty, I hear her telling her children is, you be the change. You be the instigator of good and not the instigator of bad. Is that what you say, Misty?
Be the influencer, not
Be the influencer
don't be influenced.
and don't be influenced. I think that's good information to teach children. It's not about avoiding everybody in the world or the different kids in the classroom, but be the influencer by changing, their own behavior. Okay, and so in that is that love is the answer for anything. Love is a verb, it's an action word. You can tell people till hell freezes over, I love you, but if you don't show it, it doesn't mean anything. Love is an action word. And sometimes we need to love our children in ways that they won't like, love them enough to keep them safe. That's really the man that wrote this poem, what he says in the poem, that really a mother's job is to help their children stay alive. And if you're a mother or a dad, that's not always easy. I mean, to keep your children alive. We had a 2-story house, and I have one child, have quite a few, several children, but Kim was the one that danced to a different tune. And there was a big tree outside of our 2-story house. And from the time she was a little bitty thing, she had climbed up that tree and get up there on top of that house. Well, I weighed over 280 pounds. I couldn't get her off of that house. And I knew that wasn't safe for her to be up there, but all the encouragement that I gave her wouldn't keep her from getting on top of the house. And kids do survive, but a lot in their growing up. That's our job as parents, is to keep them alive. And like I said, sometimes it's not easy, to just keep them safe. And that keeping them safe is to keep them out of harm's way, keep them away from people that are not good for them. You know, uh, because I am a survivor, any type of childhood abuse is near and dear to my heart. If you've got relatives that that have some kind of a history of abuse, and you allow your children to be around them, your children need to be taken away from you. If you're not keeping them safe by keeping them away from unsafe people, I feel pretty strong about this. If you know that they have harmed a child in any way and haven't gotten help, and you take your children around them, those kids need to be taken away from you. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Love is a verb, and sometimes we have to take action. And then to show your children love in little small ways, like putting notes in their lunch boxes. My kids got to talking the other day about the notes that a lot of times that was the first thing they want to see is the note and I believe I put a note in their lunches until they graduated from high school. That's my memory. But I love to do that. I loved it. And sometimes I would think that they didn't even notice. And then I would, see maybe on their desk or something, all of them piled up, or they might be in an envelope. They saved them. And it was just a small gesture to, on my part to do that. And then another thing that is so important, and this is important with really anyone that we are around, but mothers need to be consistent. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Kids know that they can work you, particularly if you don't keep your word. When you're not being consistent, when you tell them no about something and they keep on and on and on and on and on, and you finally give in just to make them shut up, what you're teaching them is you can get your way just by keeping on, keeping on, keeping on. So be consistent. If you're not going to hold up your no, don't say it. Don't say it. because that indicates to them that they can wear anybody down enough to get what they want, to get their way. So consistency, it is one of the best ways to make your children feel safe too. I mean, this is back to safety, uh, and as much as kids don't sometimes like a routine, they thrive on it. Children thrive on routines. They might act like they don't. Teenagers will act like it more. Teenagers are, I always say that that children are self-centered. I mean, they're born that way because all their needs come from outside themselves. The only other thing that's any more self-centered is a teenager. And I know some of you have raised teenagers. Teenagers think the whole blamed world revolves around them, and they don't know the word no. And if you haven't told them no in childhood, if you've given them their way about everything, you've crippled your child. But now put it on them. As they get older, it's up to them to make these decisions of if they want to live a consistent life and keep their word and integrity and all that. But children thrive. I'm going to repeat this: thrive with routine. And then it's good to have a day off. It's good to have a weekend. And kids need some free time to do whatever they want to do. As a child, and I hate to just keep bringing my own childhood up, but it was a hard childhood. I was the mother, I was the housekeeper, I was the cook, I was blah, blah, blah. And the only thing I wanted to do was that we had this one kind of overstuffed chair, and I wanted to sit in that chair sideways and dangle my legs off of the arm of that chair. That's all I wanted to do, just sit and dangle my legs off the side of the chair. And mother would be laying on the couch. And she would say things like, get up, get the lead out, go do, I mean, I hated that. Get the lead out, get the lead out, go clean that back porch, go do this, go to that. It was like I could never just do nothing. And children need times to just do nothing. They get tired. It takes a lot of energy for children. They burn up a lot of energy and they get tired. And so it takes a lot of rest. Toddlers and teenagers need about the same amount of rest because they are burning up so much energy on the inside. They're growing, teenagers and toddlers. Okay, so then what a good mother is they're fierce. And I see some mothers on here that are very fierce. Fierce means you wear those mama bear t-shirts. You are a mama bear on the inside, and boy, nobody better mess with your little baby bears. Now you can say what you want to the children, if they act up or something, but you don't want anybody else to. It's not anybody else's business, And if those children are abused in any way, that fierceness comes out, and the mothers wear those mama bear t-shirts with pride. There's a little story about that I used to tell all the time. I love the story about, if you want to know how to raise children, look at nature, watch animals. I liked the story about the mama bear. They usually have two at a time. So this mama bear had two cubs born at the same time, twin cubs. And so what parents' job is, the only job that we have with kids, is to teach them how to live out there in the real world. And that's our job, is to teach them how to live out there in the real world. So these little cubs were up, let's say they were teenagers, getting ready to leave home. But through the years, those months that they were younger, she would take them through the forest and she would show them which berries were good to eat. And if they started to reach for the poisonous ones, she'd take that paw and slap their hand. And so they learned to, which berries were safe and which were poisonous by the mother teaching them. And then she'd take them down to the river. and teach them to watch for fish, and how the fish would come down the river, and to stay real quiet and stand there and just see this fish, and then take that paw and go in there and pick up a fish. And they had lunch, so she taught them how to fish and get their lunch. And then she would take them to an opening, and she would have them to look around, and she would say, I want you to look around and see the danger. And they couldn't see the danger, but the mother, way off in the distance, could see a mountain lion. The mother could see a mountain lion way off in the distance. And so she would teach him, when you see a mountain lion, you find the tallest tree that you can find and crawl up there. So she was teaching them how to keep themselves safe, how to keep themselves fed, and in the winter, she'd show them the cave that they were born in. And you go in that cave and you sleep all winter. So she taught them how to take care of themselves. So after she had taught them all that she knew to teach them, one day she took them to that opening that had this tall tree. She took them to the opening, and she said, now y'all just stay right here and I'll be back, or I'll see you. And so she left, and those little cubs were there, and they kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And mother never came back. She never did come back. And then they got to fussing. Well, she would come back, except she's mad at you. You acted out this morning. And they got to fighting. The two of them got to fighting because they thought the other one had made the mother not come back, not want to be with. So they got to fighting and fussing and pulling their fur off of each other till they were exhausted. And they were exhausted, and they laid down on the ground and they slept. And the next morning they woke up and they were hungry. And they went out and they picked them some good berries. They went down to the river and got them some fish to eat. They saw a mountain lion. They climbed a tree. They took care of themselves. A lot of people will not teach children that. And what that mother bear taught them is I'm going to teach you everything I know, then I'm going to let you go. And that's where a lot of humans, we don't know how to let go of children. So, these little cubs stayed mad at her for a long time. That old heifer had just went off and left them. And so they stayed puffed up and mad at her, But then they found mates, and they kind of went off their separate lives. And then they had cubs of their own. And one day they saw their mama walking through the forest, her head held high, and she nodded at them and they nodded at her. And she knew she had done a good job. That's what healthy parenting is. It's not wrapping our kids up and wanting them to be with us every single solitary second. It's about, that's one of the things that I did with my children. And sometimes, we can take it into that thing to the extreme. But I wanted my children to know that they did not ever have to stay home and take care of me. And they don't now. They do not have to take care of me. I'm very sufficient. They want to in their adult life, but I wanted to raise my children with an outstretched hand where they could go on and live their own life. In my mother's sickness, she couldn't give me that. Hers was, stay with me. If you don't, I will die. That is a bad, bad message to give to a child. And I was always afraid to leave. I mean, I did leave and pretty early, but I was always afraid every time that phone rang that my mother was dead and I'd caused it because I'd left home. That is sickness. Okay, so consistency. Be consistent to keep your kids safe. My husband's first sponsor came and he made us around the kitchen table, not the big dining room table, but the kitchen table. And he would meet us and to talk with us about how to raise kids. Of course, he didn't have any, and I knew a lot more about raising kids than he ever thought about. But we listened to him because he was my husband's sponsor. And what he told Ariel was, he said, you be consistent with your kids. If you are an SOB to them, be a consistent SOB. If you're going to be strict, be strict. If you're going to be, anyway, he said consistency is the best thing. Of course, the best thing is not to be an SOB with your kids, but let them know what they can count on, what they can count on. So the next, and then, oh, I've already done that. And then, so the next thing that mothers have to be is to be brave. Be brave. Being a mother is not for the weak of heart. It is the hardest job. Misty's standing here, I've been shaking her head. It's the hardest job anyone will ever have. I get so amazed at clients. Yeah, they come in and they, on a certain level, they love their mothers. But there's a joke around here. If it's not one thing, it's your mother. I've never had a client yet that somehow, some way, blamed whatever their problem was. Well, after all, my mother, blah, 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 my mother, my mother. Dads get a hall pass. I'll tell you, they'll put those dads on a pedestal. They don't want to talk about, well, he loved us. He loved us. Well, hell, he wasn't ever there. What do you mean he loved? But a child wants time with their father so bad. They have that father hunger, particularly women with eating disorders have that father hunger, that longing for fathers. And oh yeah, there's my mother. And they don't give a lot of, particularly when they're young or particularly if they're addicts. They don't appreciate mothers till they sober up and they realize, she's the one that's been keeping the home fires burning. There is, there's no perfection in being a parent, and there's no perfection at all in being a mother. But there is nothing more blessed or to have a blessing than for a child to have a good mother. There was a woman that used to speak in Al-Anon. Her name was Blanche, and she would talk on sponsorship. And she said, the way you pick a good sponsor is the way a husband needs to pick, the way a woman needs to pick a good husband. When you start to pick a good husband, find a well-mothered man. If you can find a well-mothered man, and that doesn't mean smothering, but a good mother that taught that son how to take care of himself and how to honor women, you got a winner there. So she said, do that with sponsorship. Find a well-sponsored sponsor. If your sponsor that you're asking doesn't have a sponsor and doesn't work with the sponsor, you go on down that list. You find a well-sponsored sponsor, like finding a well-mothered man to marry. And that could be in the reverse too. All right. So be brave. Like I said, being a mom is not for the weak of heart. It's the hardest job anyone will ever do. And it is the most rewarding. We do not need to get our good feelings about ourselves from our kids, but I'll tell you, it's hard not to. I watch Jackie and her kids, excel and they've launched them out and they've all are leaving home. And then there's Cora. She's getting ready to have a empty nest, and please, all of us, we need to really support Cora because right now she's kind of ready for the empty nest. But Jackie can tell you, it's not all fun when they're gone. It's like you look at each other and say, okay, well, now what do we do? Because you spent all these years being a mother and mothering those kids, So change, there's life is change. Now, sometimes when our kids get off the beaten path, and they become addicts themselves and all, the best thing that a parent can do for an addict child is give them a free rein, and let them know that you're there if they ever want help, that you love them and you care about them, but do not love them to death. So many addicts, the way they afford their addiction is for mama. Not a lot of times from dads, but from mamas, because we just feel so sorry for them. And they say things like, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Addicts lie so much, if their lips are moving, they're lying, if they're practicing an addiction. And so they'll go to mamas, well, I need this, I need that, I need something else. And they'll wiggle into their mother's heart, and mother will give them money, and they go buy drugs or they go buy booze. If you're doing that and enabling a child of yours to continue in their addiction, go to Al Anon. I want to say lock yourself up in the house and don't let them in. But anyway, go to Al Anon and learn to love them and let them go. But let them know that you're there. You'll be there. And, mothers stand with kids when nobody else does. And what I mean by that is mothers never give up. Mothers never give up on their children. They don't. I'm looking at a bunch of mothers out here. I don't think mothers ever give up. But if you have an addict child, whether they are teenagers or 40 or 50 years of age, go to Al Anon. Learn how to love them in a healthy way and support them in their wellness. And I will tell you, addictions have a high rate of relapse. And sometimes parents get worn completely out with their kids relapse and relapse and relapsing. And if they keep going to treatment, if they keep going on the path, guess what? They have a higher chance of recovery than if they don't. And sometimes they need a little help. And I hear people say, well, we paid for treatment 3 or 4 times. Well, if they had cancer, how many times would you pay for treatment? How many trips would you make to a cancer center? So addictions are diseases, It's the mind, body, and soul. And it's much different than just a physical disease. And so parents get kind of, they need to be educated on how to treat an adult child that's an addict or a young teenager that's an addict. And so get yourself some education and don't love them to death. Love them, but don't love them to death. So I want to close my part with this. The best thing you can do for your family as a mother. Now, the Bible says the father needs to be the spiritual head of the family. Guess what? There are some very spiritual fathers, and that they do take that lead. But more than not, the mothers have to take the lead. If the father doesn't take the spiritual lead of the family, then it falls to their mother. And so mothers step up for that. And so one of the things I encourage people to do is invite God every day into the center of your parenting. Invite God into it, and then into your family. One of the things that my Miss Pat taught Ariel and I, she was like our spiritual director, our spiritual leader. And after he sobered up, of course, I've been doing this for years, but what she gave him an assignment. She said every morning before you go to work or right after you get up, and Tennie's still there, I want you to take her hand and get on your knees, and together you invite God into the day and into your family. Now, for a man that didn't have much spiritual training growing up, although his stepdad's a Baptist preacher, I don't know, he didn't have much spiritual, but he followed direction, and it was awkward at first. And he'd hold my hand, and I've been praying for years. I just wanted to pray, but I kept my mouth shut. And I let him do it. And it was like a child. And I got to watch how he began to change. And I just could love him and support him through that change. And our children benefited from that tremendously because he began to take the spiritual lead in our family. And so I want to end with Proverbs 22:6. It says, sounds like I'm doing a spiritual talk this morning, and maybe I am, but it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So have faith, do not give up, because it says, when train up a child in the way that he should go or she should go. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. Now, old could be 30, 35. Maybe they take the, get off the beaten path and stray. But if you've taught them from the time that they're babies about God and about grace and about forgiveness and about love, if you've done that, that's what kids need, and they will come back to that. I'm in the addiction field, and I can't keep from talking about addictions. But the thing about it, people can recover from addictions. I don't care. And those mothers that have been in and out of treatment, go again. If you're recommended to stay longer, you stay longer. We had a woman here that I started to call her this morning to ask if I could share her story. I'm not giving you her name. She was here quite a few years ago, had been in and out of treatment, had no desire to recover. Her folks were just sick of her, and they stuck her here. And she had a bad eating disorder, bulimic and anorexic. And she had a young son that had watched her drink and eat and puke and drink and eat and puke. And so she came here, and she was arrogant, and she was angry, and she hated my guts. And we worked with her and worked with her and worked with her. And then during family week, I made no bones about it. I told them, because she hadn't changed any by family week. I told her parents, I said, if you want your daughter to die, you take her home. If you want her to live, you leave her here for 6 months. And, she's dependent on y'all forever for everything. And, cut off the money. The only thing that, give her is for her to stay 6 months in treatment. And guess what? She did. And she's been sober and clean ever since. And her son is an older teenager, and he's doing fabulous things with his life. And his mother is right there with him, clean and sober and abstinent. That's why we stay in this field, to see the miracles over and over and over. But if those grandparents hadn't listened to us, and that daughter cussed them and hated them for making her stay, and she didn't have to stay. She could have got out and gone and get a job, and but she stayed, and her life became different, because what she found while she was here was the God of her understanding. Okay, so as usual, I've stopped sharing and gone to preaching. So want to open it up to y'all. And if you have a mother that is living, be sure and honor her this coming Sunday. If not, honor your mother with your children. Tell them about their grandmother, the good things about their mother, not all those bad things, but tell them about what they are missing, because I know some of your mothers are passed, but tell your children about your mother and their grandmother. Okay, who would like to share? Hello?
I'll share.
Hi, Jackie.
I'll share. Hi, Tennie. Thank you for the talk today. This is interesting because it brought me back to where I was getting to shades. I mean, I was the most probably enmeshed mother with her children that you could possibly have. I lived, through them, with them. I wouldn't let them out of my sight for a second. I mean, I was just helicoptering, mothering, smothering them to death, and literally loving them to death. And what I learned is that it was more about my insecurities than it ever was about them. It was me trying to fix, manage, and control them, because I felt so broken inside, and I felt so unworthy and unloved, and not the mother that I had. I tried to be different, and in doing something opposite of what I'd gotten, I had overdone it. There's probably a happy medium somewhere in the middle, and I was far extreme one side to the other. And one of the things that Shade had taught me is that I need to live for myself and not through my children. And that was a really interesting concept to me because that's what I lived through them and for them. And so it really helped me learn to be independent of my children and let them live their lives so that I could live mine. And when I was at Shades, which was almost 4 years ago, the thought of my youngest leaving the house and being empty nesting was scary as hell. As a matter of fact, I thought, okay, my husband's going to divorce me. We won't even like each other sometimes without the kids. And, I'm going to be looking across from here. And what am I going to do without my kids to do for? And after Shades, I went to Al-Anon, and I still go to Al-Anon, and I work my program and work with my sponsors and do everything. But what I've come to know is life is fabulous with empty nesting now. I never thought I'd say that 4 years ago, but now I've come to learn that I can live independent of them and be still there for them if they need me. But for the most part, I can live on my own. And I never thought that was possible without the tools that Shades has taught me, as well as my program and my sponsor. And so I am constantly watching them, live their best life and also make mistakes along the way. But I have to remind myself to jump in that beautiful hula I carried around with me for many, many weeks. And I just jump right back in my circle and think, you know what, I can help them, but they need to help themselves. This isn't my lesson to learn. And I'm depriving them of opportunities to learn from their mistakes if I fix them all the time. This is their opportunity. So I've learned so much. And I feel like today I'm proud to be a mother and a better parent. But 4 years ago, I'm not so sure that I would have worn that badge with any honor. And with that, I just appreciate this talk today. There's so much good things that you said, and just so much. I took 2 pages of notes, and it was just so good. I called Carly before the call and said, "You've got to get on Tennie Talk today." She's talking about mothering. She goes, "Mom, I'm having lunch with my boyfriend." I said, "Well, we'll watch if you'd like. It's taped. I can give you the link later."
There you go with your mothering. That's good.
I was even mothering to get on the call to mother about mothering. So see what's wrong with that. But you know what? But the first thing you said, which was so true, was the one thing you said is women that mother their addiction can't mother their children. And that's what I was doing. And it was just so interesting, and I loved it. So thank you. And I'm sorry to talk so long, but
That's
everybody
great.
have a blessed Mother's Day. And thank you.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to you, Jackie. Cam, what's it like to encourage your son to go 1,100 miles away from home to go to
Not like, well, it's about 1,100. It's 11 hours. I think it's great.
11 hours.
Lessons, and since the day he was born, I told you he'd go off to school. Y'all have chastised me a little for it, but that's how I was raised. That once you graduated, we're here for you, but you need to go and find your way. And I will forever be thankful for that lesson. To the point when my father passed and I was already in college, I was going to move back to take care of my mother. And she set my little ass down one day and said, "Baby girl, I didn't have you for you to live your life, to give up your life to come home for me. Get your ass back to school." And again, I will forever be indebted to her for that. And I wish I could tell her that. But you said, mother your children. And I've tried to teach Spence that lesson, because that's one of the greatest lessons my mother ever gave me.
Yeah. Well, I want to contradict you a little bit. I was glad that you made that decision about Spence. And that's really how we raised it. That's how I raised my children, is with that outstretched hand. They never, ever had to stay at home for us. I wanted them to go.
Oh, I know y'all, but y'all do have teased me about it. I'm not saying that you didn't want us to do that. I'm saying how y'all have teased me about that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Because my oldest daughter chose to go to school here in Abilene. She wanted to play in the big purple band at ACU. And I said, okay. and you're going to live in the dorm, and we're going to pretend that you are 500 miles away from home. She thought I was teasing. And so every day she wanted to come home and study. I had to fight her and her dad both, because she would come home and do her laundry. She would have a fight with her roommate, and she'd want to come home. And I would say, no, absolutely not. I'd put my foot down and I said, you can, pretend that you're out of town. Anyway, she lasted 1 year at ACU, and then she went to Tech, and it worked out great. But I had to put my foot down with her and her dad, because I wanted her to have that experience of being away from home. And you can't do that if you're at home. It makes, so anyone else? Who's next?
Yeah, Chastity and Diane have their hands up.
Okay. Where's Chastity?
Right here. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay, yeah.
So it's really hard to distinguish, because I have a narcissistic mother. That's one of my claims. I'm an adult child of a narcissist. And I guess it causes me to smother my children. And I've been working on it to try to give them their independence and everything. But at the same time, I have a big fear that I am exactly like my mother in the way of narcissism. And so I overly check to make sure I am not doing the same thing she does. But my counselor that I go to recently, she has been listening to me for a while, and she came to the same conclusion that most everyone around me has come to, and they said I need to dismiss my mother from my life. So I had been doing that for a few weeks. And people notice. I just stopped trying to talk to her. I tried talking like kindly to her, saying, "Hey, how you doing? Just checking up on you." But when I stopped doing that, people started asking questions. My sister yesterday even asked me, "Why do you think mom hates you?" And I said, "There's no way to even explain it." Unless I did what I did with my husband and had to record, because no one seems to believe me. Like, it's because narcissists are so good at acting very good in front of people, that behind closed doors, it's just hard. And now I'm battling with helping raising my two kids and battling an addiction. And it's hard to not overly mother when you're trying to, like, I still work the meal plan and everything. But there's sometimes where one time I had forgotten to eat. It was 5 o'clock. I'd made all the kids, my nieces, nephews, and my own children food. And I sat down, and my nephew was like, "Aunt Chastity, aren't you going to eat?" So it's the small things that sometimes I forget to do. And then to realize these young children are watching you.
Mhm.
So it's like a triangle, like narcissist mother, my anorexia, and mothering.
Mhm.
So
I really support you in doing what you're doing about not talking to your mother. I had to divorce my mother for about a year, and I could have no contact with her at all, because I would get so sick myself if I was that involved with her. And my fear was always that she'd kill herself. Well, she lived to be 87, so she didn't kill herself. But I had to, I had to learn to take care of myself. And I hear that you're aware of smothering your kids. And I would say, beyond a doubt, give them some freedom. Give them freedom. Give them some guidelines, but freedom within those guidelines, because smothering will make them absolutely want to leave home as quick as they can to get out from under your thumb. So, do some parenting classes. That would be good for you.
okay.
And feed yourself appropriately. That's good that your nephew called you out on that. That's good.
Yeah.
Children notice. Yeah, good
Yeah.
good to see you. Anyone else?
Diane,
Oh, Diane.
And Seneca.
and then Seneca.
Okay, Diane.
Hi, as you know, my 4 sons are adopted, and my mother was an addict, an alcoholic, and her mothering was, well, it was just not there. So I tried to be different with my kids, but I never felt worthy enough, good enough. I always wanted kids of my own, And I never accepted them as kids of my own. And that's terrible until, now I have finally gotten better at, well, I've worked on my addictions and my problems. But my husband was an alcoholic and I was a food addict. Had been abandoned by their parents. So I prayed God's to be, I knew they were orphans. Even with us as parents, I knew they were orphans. So I prayed that God would, be the father to the fatherless for them. And I really think that had worked because they're all four godly men, searching and seeking out God. But I also taught them to be independent, so independent that my 10-year-old, my second son, would run away from home and plan. And he had this full plan. He's going to get a job. He's going to do all this. And I had to finally take him to the police, and they had to scare him to stop him from running away because he was going to take care of himself. And now it's funny. At the time, it was scary as heck.
Yeah.
But, I'm glad they are all independent men, but they are all godly and they keep up. We keep up. They get together every morning and pray together, even though they're, one's in Florida and the other three are all an hour or so apart here in Texas.
How wonderful.
It is. And I know I had nothing to do with that except praying the prayer that God be the father to the fatherless.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Thanks. Seneca, did I say that right?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Sorry, I'm outside.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, wow, what a challenge to recognize mothers, because honestly, in my heart, my mother passed. That was my grandmother. She suffered from a sedentary lifestyle, and she ate herself to death. So she died of congestive heart failure. And I say that in the most aware way for me because I have an eating disorder. I eat disorderly, and then I work out because of it. So I have what I consider exercise bulimia and compulsive overeating. So my mother was like the big sister I never wanted, because she had me at 15, but I was raised with a resentment. And every year around this time of year, I'm like, oh my God, what kind of card does she deserve? But as I'm getting clearer and cleaner in my recovery, what I'm learning is my mother was the only one that held it down for me. My father was an absentee drunk. He was an absentee drunk. So as I raised my own kids, and I'm like, damn, she did all this by herself? Wow. How hard was that? But now, don't get me wrong. I was sexually abused from 5 until I was 13. I had lice in my head. I was very neglected as a child. But today, your talk encouraged me. You know what? It might not be the one thing you can get for your mom, but how about a Zoom call with your siblings and your mom and find something good to talk about your mom today? Because you know what? She taught me how to dance. And a lot of people like the way that I dance.
You are a dancer.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, through recovery, Tennie, I only see that her struggle was real. And that is my struggle. But you know what? I don't talk to my mom very much because she is very abusive and very loose with abuse when I'm around. And so I can recover with her, like my husband said, from Arkansas, feed her with a long handled spoon.
That's right.
And I've learned that is loving for me. And that's what matters in my recovery today. And I appreciate that. I can think of the hard stuff, but when I think about her as a single mom every day, pulling it through, I can think of one good thing about my mom for this Sunday. And you encourage me to make a Zoom call. And that's the best I can do. To God be the glory. Thank you.
Thank you. And it'll make you feel good about yourself. That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Lindsay, you have anything? Hello, Lindsay?
I'm here. I'm coming. I mean, I guess I should have something, right?
You should. I was just wondering if you could recognize your story from just the previous speaker.
I can. It's wild, actually. I was texting Misty and told her, I was like, to this day, I still have panic attacks in the card aisle trying to figure out I just don't even go to the card aisle anymore. Like, so y'all just know I love you. You're not going to get a card from me because, you know, but I was raised by my grandmother because my mom was 15 when she had me. And I have a relationship with her now. In fact, through recovery, we've grown a lot as far as my biological mom over the last 3 years substantially. And we can get together, have a good time. I don't, she doesn't fill the role of mom in my life, even though I still honor her as my birth mother. So I get her a Mother's Day present and I make sure she knows I love her. My grandmother, on the other hand, she raised me, and man, she poured her entire self into me, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And as much as I love her, and as much as I know she loves me, I know that is still probably one of my the most unhealthy relationship that I have, because it's very codependent, give or take both ways. But she has literally, she's taught me to be independent. Okay, Minnie, don't say anything. I can take care of myself, and I'm strong because she was an example of strength for me. And so I honor her, and I'm looking forward to spending time with both of them this weekend. Now, granted, that wasn't always the case. So it still gets a little stressful sometimes, knowing who you're going to please and who you're not going to please, and just being okay with whatever happens.
Just pleasing yourself.
Yep.
Not in a selfish way, but in a selfless way.
Right.
Love you. Thanks
Love
for
you.
sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne, how is this holiday going to be for you?
Got to figure out what to do. Well, I've been talking to my son and daughter-in-law about what they would like to do for Mother's Day. And I didn't know if there would be time. I do appreciate you talking about parenting and how to be a good mother, because I have long said that the two most important jobs we have in our lifetime is to be married and to be parents. And we get zippo training except what we see our parents do. And of course, as everybody knows that's listening, if they didn't have a good example, then unless they make a conscious choice, they're not going to be a good example for us. So I think it's wonderful that you have talked about this.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I actually need to call. I have a question, but I have thought a lot about my own mother, and I was able to forgive her when I was 40 for many of the wrongs that she had done, and I do believe that was because of the Holy Spirit. I wish she were still here so that I could let her know what I have done to get healthy, and that I still love her very much. I don't blame her for her deficiencies as a mother. She did the best she could with what she had. Unfortunately, it wasn't what I needed. But I think she'd be very proud of me for having gone to Shades and having stayed the extra time, and to be doing all that I've been doing to get healthy in every way. So in that regard, it's going to be a very good Mother's Day.
I just wanted to check in with you, and because this is your first holiday out of treatment, and so
yeah,
let us know how it goes, and call Kim and ask your question. That'd be good.
well, my daughter-in-law has said rather than eat out, she will make me a meal that will be good for me to eat. And I have shared with them Missy's cookbook. So I
Good.
think food wise, it's going to be on plan, and
Good.
I will contact about my question. I'm not quite sure what to do with my other grandson, Hunter's brother, but I'll call.
When in doubt, don't.
Good advice.
All
Good
right.
Sherry
Uh,
Davis.
So Sherry, and then I want to ask Ronald Yancey. Is that Yancey? Hello.
It does say that, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see your face. Okay, Sherry.
Well, I
Sherry.
really lowered my hand back down.
Okay, Sherry.
Bad.
All right. Yeah, and
Right.
then we'll close with you. You're next.
Who? Me?
Sherry.
Oh, you want to talk to me?
Yes, I want you to talk to us.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I texted Diane last night and told her I wasn't sure I was getting on. And I think in a way I'm glad I did, but I wish I could say I was where everybody else was at with their mother. So I feel guilty that I'm not. But I don't know. That's why I lowered my hand. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just
So
I know she did the best she could with what she had. So
okay. No, they really don't. And I hate that statement. I mean, that just gives them a hall pass. Well, they did the best they could with what they had. No, your mother didn't. My mother didn't. You know, and I don't like that statement. And the thing about it, you've done a lot of work around your dad, and mothers. It's hard to a lot of times to grieve the loss of not having healthy mothering. And then guess what? We have to become our own healthy mothers and find people to mother us. I had two women in my life, Pat Huber, who was my spiritual director and leader, and just like a member of our family. When you have a sick mom, then your children do not have healthy. I mean, they don't have a grandmother. My children did not have on either side a healthy grandmother, and so it's hard to grieve the loss of not being mothered, and you wasn't. And so one of the things, I had a friend down at in Florida. Her name was Barbara, and she was my earthly mother. She mothered me, and that was a gift from her. And so that's probably what's going to happen with you. You're going to find someone that can kind of give you that place in your heart that is empty right now. And you're early on the road to recovery, and feel your feelings, feel the pain of it. It is painful to realize, yeah, you had living, breathing parents, but yet you were an orphan. And a lot of you on that screen were that you were orphans, as far as not having healthy parenting. And that we can become our own healthy parent, don't give them any more power. And, but I hope that helps, Sherry, and take care of yourself. And this weekend, let your children honor you. You have been a good mother, and let your children honor you. And so y'all have a wonderful Mother's Day and a good
thanks,
week.
Tennie.
And all of you honor yourselves and your mothers and grandmothers. And just know that, I do not like that statement. They did the best they could with what they had. Guess what? They did not. So, I just don't believe that because I just don't. But anyway, I really think that at some point that they could have made some different decisions and they chose not to, but that's my belief. So y'all have a wonderful weekend and we will see you back here next Wednesday at 10. I'm going to be talking about the four, what is it?
Agreements,
Uh,
the 4 agreements.
Yes, the
Yeah,
four
yeah, the four
agreements.
agreements.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
thanks,
Thank you,
Diane.
Diane. The four agreements. I've read that years and years ago and I forgot about it. And so Misty got me a copy of it and let's talk about that next week. You know, the truth is the truth is the truth and it comes in different forms. You know, those four agreements it could be right out of the Bible. It could be right out of the 12 steps. It is all truth. And so we're going to explore those four agreements next Wednesday. And so again, have a wonderful weekend and we will see you back here Wednesday. Thank
Happy
you.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day,
Thank
Tennie.
you.
Thank
I
you.
miss
Y'all take
you.
care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy Father's Day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Gloria was on.
Hey, who is that? I noticed it. Who is that?